Hi, thanks for joining me today. I'm Mindy with Literary Liaisons, and today we're going to go across town to Louisa's Cafe and interview Jack Remick and Robert J. Ray. I first met Jack and Bob a few years ago when I was just getting ready to pay for an extra workshop at a conference, and I thought, you know, I want to see what these guys are about. I was so tired of putting money out for conferences, writing workshops and things, and really not getting much out of them. And I knew that they had a weekly writers group over at Louisa's Cafe, so I went and joined them. And the rest is history. I've been writing with them now for several years. That book that did pique my interest was Robert Ray's The Weekend Novelist Rewrites the Novel, which I've written about quite a bit in this blog. So, and you can see all my tags and things. So I've worked my way through it quite well. I think between them they've probably got 25 novels published, but we'll ask them that later. So I'm going to head across town to Louisa's. Let's go. Thanks for joining me. I did make it over to Louisa's Cafe. I'm going to interview Jack and Bob here in just a few moments. They're wrapping up with the writers group right now, and they're on their way over, so we'll be right back. We are on. All right. So today I'm here at Louisa's Cafe in Seattle, Washington, where Jack and Bob meet twice a week with a growing number of writers. And I'd like to welcome you and thank you for meeting with me today. So I know that Natalie Goldberg was partly your inspiration for starting the writers group, but how did that all come about?
I went to Natalie Goldberg and she turned me on. And the third year I went to Taos, there were people there from Seattle. So we started a group up at the B&O Cafe. And then I got Jack up there. And then it was too smoky. So.
And when was that?
It was 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
20, maybe 21.
Okay.
And it was, but there were people from up there who started coming in, and we had maybe 6 or 8. And then when we came here, it got bigger and bigger because of...
Well, Bob you'd had classes by then at the UW, and so some of the writers were from his classes.
I forgot about that.
Yeah. And then we moved here because the B&O was, in those days people could smoke in restaurants. So we just moved down here, and then it was called T.O.'s. Louisa's was called T.O.'s. And then it was sold, I don't know, 10 years later, something like that, to Michael and Louisa, and we've just been right here ever since.
And so you started the group about 20 years ago?
Yeah, 20 years ago.
Do you have any idea how many members there are? I know the Facebook page is really active with people I don't ever see on a weekly basis.
There are people who come back after 5 years and say, hey, you're still here. So there's no way to count them.
Okay.
But I think the Facebook page is the best thing, but a lot of those people haven't been. But I imagine 300.
Yeah. Wow.
Easily.
Oh, wow. So why do you think writing groups and writing partners are important? I know you two partner on just about everything that you write. You've written a book together. Is there just one book that you've written together? Or yeah? And,
yes.
Okay.
One published book.
One published
We're working
book.
on another one. Yeah.
Well, we first tried to write a book of short stories using we called it the 90-minute short story.
Okay.
That. And we field tested it with writers from the Louisa's group. And then we tried to sell that, and the publisher said, nobody wants to read a short story book. Why don't you write a mystery book? So, so Bob figured out, well, we can do the weekend novels, write some mystery.
And Bob, how many of the Murdoch mystery books have you written?
6.
6 of them.
Yeah.
And
I did 5 in the first person, and they're all film noir. And this last one is third person and heading toward thriller.
And have you written all of them here at Louisa's, or at least the bulk of them?
No, I wrote 3 in California before I moved.
Okay.
A long time ago.
Okay.
I was a child.
I was a child, a mere child. And Jack, you've had several books published over the last, say, 2 years. Congratulations. Yeah. And have you written the bulk of them here at Louisa's? Yeah.
Most of them. I had 3 or 4 early ones that I wrote that sort of I kept aside. But after 92, when Bob and I started writing together, I've written everything. You know, all of the novels that are now out. And even the stuff that I had on the shelf, I've rewritten here in various ways.
That Fabulous. Why do you think writing groups are important?
Because writers are isolated and it'll kill you, and that's why they drink. I mean, all those guys.
It's true.
You know, there's a new book on the 6 alcoholic writers, Faulkner and Fitzgerald. But it's just insane if you want to do that, because it's solitary and you need energy. That's the other thing. If you sit beside somebody who's having your thing, your vibes, there's more energy. You can feel it at the table.
Sure.
People come back. Even the people who don't know what they're doing come back because they feel the energy. So
Right.
it's great.
I've gotten to the point where I don't even try to do, well, that's not true. Most of the time, I don't even try to do time writing away from the group.
Right.
But I can set the clock, but I kind of feel that you need two.
Right.
Because not only do you write it, but then you have to read it. And if you're doing it by yourself and doing timed writing, then you read it to yourself. Big deal. You know,
Right.
but it's the exposure to the other person, the other, that really makes that energy thing possible.
Yeah.
But what you have here, no place else, is permission. You have permission to take this time out of your life, and it's like you signed up for a class. You give yourself permission to do it, and you won't do it any other time. So we take that really seriously.
Now, it's part of the discipline that we've developed, both collectively as a team and then individually as novelists. You know, the discipline of coming here, writing it, typing it up, sharing it with other people, rewriting it, is all part of the energy creation process. And what we found is that by doing it that way, you get deeper into the work quicker. If you just leave it by yourself, stuck on a shelf, you don't, you just wind up with the same garbage that you have. But if you force yourself, then the first step, you force yourself to get it out, and the first step is reading it to other people. And that's why it works for me. No matter what I write, I read it.
You used the term a few years ago to me that taught me a great lesson. It was to honor my writing.
Yeah.
That's correct.
And
Honor your word.
both, be willing to read it, be willing to be honest with it, and to be willing to go home and type it up.
Yeah. When we were teaching together, that was part of our mantra, was stand up and deliver, honor your words. Don't swallow them. And we found that as time went on, our students became more adept at reading out loud and getting deeper into themselves and into the words.
And we learned that from Natalie, because you read and there's this pulsing in the room, and somebody stands up and reads, and you realize they've just gone through a big threshold crossing.
That's exciting.
Yeah, it really is.
That is exciting. So I have watched you guys for a few years now, and I think that above all else, I think that you're teachers. I know you're writers and you're prolific authors and all that, but I do believe that you're teachers. And I know that you've, I've seen you when there's just a spark in your eyes when you're working with what we call the Louisa's newbies. And we see it every time there's somebody new. You guys are just so generous and so wonderful with your knowledge, your information, but mostly in listening to people that are trying to find their voice. And I know that everybody here owes you a debt of gratitude there. But what I'd like to know is, what do you get from working with new writers?
Not a fucking thing. No.
Am I supposed to edit? There's no editing here,
You're going to
Jack.
edit this, right? Okay, just make sure. But let me go first on this one.
You go first.
What I get out of it, working in the group, is first of it's a place to go. It's a kind of a sacred time. It forces me to take the first step to putting work on the table. If I don't write it here, if I don't force myself to write it and then type it up, then come Thursday when I meet with Bob and Joel, or on Monday when I meet with Bob, I don't have anything to put on the table. And part of what we've developed as a team is, if you do not put work on the table, you cannot comment on anybody else's stuff. And so that forces you to put stuff on the table. It forces you to say, I'm a writer, I've written it, I've typed it, here it is, what do you say? And then that steps into the next phase, which is the rewrite, because we both believe deeply and sincerely, and all other adverbs you want to stick in there, that the art is in the rewrite.
Yeah.
Okay?
Certainly agree. So Bob, what do you get from working with new writers here at Louisa's when we get newbies coming in the door?
Yeah, if they come, that's really good, but I hear something that they don't, and it's really if you can figure out a way to say that to them without making them jump out of their underwear, then they get deeper faster. And so, and Natalie also taught us to listen. So you bring that listening back, and maybe some of them will listen to each other instead of looking off into space when somebody's reading. So it's a really big deal.
Well, I see Louisa's as a legacy that the two of you are leaving for the Seattle writing community. So keeping that in mind, how would you like your legacy to unfold?
I'm not dead yet, so
I
don't give a
know.
shit about the legacy.
It's already a legacy, though. Clearly, you're not dead.
I don't want to be. I was a teacher for years, I taught university level. You always become part of somebody's past. People have got to realize that I come here because I'm a writer, and the teaching is just an adjunct to that. That is not the primary focus. In fact, Bob and I quit team teaching because it was sucking so much out of us that we couldn't get regenerated. And so we quit teaching, except an occasional workshop. And the work has flowered. Bob's now got 2 Murdoch novels. We've got a book of essays coming out. You've written 2 or 3 additions to the Weekend Novelist series. So you see, teaching is something that just happens. It's not a focus. And if it were a focus, it would just suck us dry as that done. And I find that the older I get, the less likely I am to want to teach.
Legacy?
Yes.
Legacy?
Legacy.
Yeah, I would like it to make a lot of money.
Okay.
That's the measure.
That's the legacy I want.
One last thing on that. You remember we have a blog called Bob and Jack's Writing Blog. The first entry on that is how to make good writing better. Okay, so that's our whole goal, because we really believe that writers and the group here, they're guardians of the language. And every time I hear the language getting kicked in the butt, I realize that coming to the table with people, we're keeping the language alive. And every time somebody says, "This is for my wife and I want to kick them in the face, because the grammar still has rule. I mean, the language teaches its own. So anyway, that's part of my quest for a legacy.
That is
keep the language alive.
That's your legacy. It is, because you guys talk about that all the time, making good writing better.
Yeah.
We want them to inflect the pronoun right.
Yeah,
that's
yes,
part of the legacy.
Exactly. And but we're passing on through our writing. We're passing on a certain pattern of writing that's existed for 3,000 years. I mean, all the rhetoric that we're talking about has been there. I mean, the Greeks had words for it. We're trying to teach people, to honor that past, because you can't always just write in the now. You've got to bring the past with you.
So that's the other thing, really. What they didn't learn in school, what they should have learned in school, they might be able to learn here if they'll open up.
Yeah.
So like rhetoric and pronouns and stuff.
I've learned 1,000 times more here than I've learned in any school or any workshop.
Every time one of our students, use it that advisedly, publishes a book, it's a success, no matter what the book is. So when we see the writers getting those things out there, that is an example. Arlene sent me a note. At one point, she had the 39th victim, and she was saying, I don't know if I'll ever get another book. And I said, well, here's what you can do. Put all of your writing in a box and put it out on the street and see how long it takes you to get it. Are you a one-book wonder, or are you a writer? If you're a writer, you don't care. You're going to write that next book. And she sent me a note the other day, said, I want to thank you for making me realize I'm not a one-book wonder.
Nice, nice. All right, well, one of the most famous epitaphs is that of Mel Blanc. He's famous for the voice of Porky the Pig, and he said, as it says on his epitaph, on his stone says, that's all, folks. Mm-hmm. So what would your epitaph be?
I leave no book unfinished.
There you go. Bob?
Because then I'm not going to become part of anybody's past. I had enough of that when I was teaching. All right. No, you don't want to become part of somebody's past. You want their. You don't want to be remembered. I mean, when I'm gone, put me in a box, burn it up, throw the ashes away. No remembrance.
So that's all, folks, huh?
That's all, folks.
Okay. So we could use that on yours.
Yeah.
Bob?
Writing practice at my funeral.
Well, we'll all do that if we're around. So, well, I want to thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your time, and I guess
right.
in those words, we'll just say that's all, folks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.